Section 1 of Lives of the Queens of England, Volume 5. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anne Boulay. Lives of the Queens of England, Volume 5, by Agnes and Elisabeth Strickland. Section 1. Catharine Parr, Chapter 1, Part 1. Catharine Parr was the first Protestant queen of England. She was the only one among the consorts of Henry VIII who, in the sincerity of an honest heart, embraced the doctrine of the Reformation, and imperilled her crown in life in support of her principles. The name of Catharine, which, from its Greek derivation, katharos, signifies pure as a limpid stream, seems peculiarly suited to the characteristics of this illustrious lady, in whom we behold the protectress of Coverdale, the friend of Anne Askew, the learned and virtuous matron who directed the studies of Lady Jane Grey, Edward VI, and Queen Elizabeth, and who may, in truth, be called the nursing mother of the Reformation. Catharine Parr was not only Queen of England, but an English queen. Although of ancient and even royal descent, she claimed, by birth, no other rank than that of a private gentlewoman. Like Anne Boleyn and Jane Seymour, Catharine Parr was only the daughter of a knight. But her father, Sir Thomas Parr, was of a more distinguished ancestry than either Sir Thomas Boleyn or Sir John Seymour. From the marriage of his Norman progenitor, Ivo de Tallebois, with Lucy, the sister of renowned Earls Morcar and Edwin, Sir Thomas Parr inherited the blood of the Anglo-Saxon kings. Ivo de Tallebois was the first Baron of Kendal, and maintained the state of a petty sovereign in the north. His male line failing with William de Lancaster, the seventh in descent, the honour and estates of that mighty family passed to his sisters Helwise and Alice. Margaret, the elder coheiress of Helwise, by Peter le Bruce, married the younger son of Robert Lord Roos, of Hamlake and Works, by Isabel, daughter of Alexander II, King of Scotland. Their grandson, Sir Thomas de Roos, married Catherine, the daughter of Sir Thomas Strickland, of Sizer Castle, Westmoreland. The fruit of this union was an only daughter, Elisabeth, who brought Kendal Castle and a rich inheritance into Queen Catherine's paternal house, by her marriage with Sir William de Parr, Knight. Sir William Parr, the grandson of this pair, was made Knight of the Garter and married Elisabeth, one of the co-heiresses of the Lord Fitzhugh, by Alice, daughter of Ralph Neville, Earl of Westmoreland, and Joan Beaufort, daughter of John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster. Alice Neville was sister to the king's great-grandmother, Cicely Neville, Duchess of York, and, through this connection, Catharine Parr was fourth cousin to Henry VIII. From the elder co-heiress of Fitzhugh, the patrimony of the Marmions, the ancient champions of England, was transmitted to Sir Thomas Parr, father of Queen Catherine. Her mother, Matilda, or as she was commonly called, Maud Green, was daughter and co-heiress of Sir Thomas Green, of Boughton and Greens Norton, in the county of Northamptonshire. This lady was a descendant of the distinguished families of Talbot and Throckmorton. Her sister Anne wedded Sir Thomas Vaux, afterwards created Lord Vaux of Harrowden, and dying childless, the whole of the rich inheritance of the Greens of Boughton centred in Matilda. At the age of 13, Matilda became the wife of Sir Thomas Parr. This marriage took place in the year 1508. The date generally assigned for the birth of Catharine Parr is 1510, but the correspondence between her mother and Lord Dacre in the 15th year of Henry VIII, in which her age is specified to be under 12, will prove that she could not have been born till 1513. Her father, Sir Thomas Parr, at that time held high offices at court, being master of the wards and comptroller of the household to Henry VIII. As a token of royal favour, we find that the king presented him with a rich gold chain, valued at £140, a very large sum in those days. Both Sir Thomas and his lady were frequent residents in the court, but the child who was destined hereafter to share the throne of their royal master first saw the light at Kendal Castle in Westmoreland, the time-honoured fortress which had been the hereditary seat of her ancestors from the days of its Norman founder, Ivo de Tallebois. A crumbling relic of this stronghold of feudal greatness is still in existence, rising like a grey crown over the green hills of Kendal. It is situated on a lofty eminence, which commands a panoramic view of the town, and the picturesque and ever-verdant vale of the Kent, that clear and rapid stream, which, night and day, sings an unwearied song, as it rushes over its rocky bed at the foot of the castle hill. The circular tower of the castle is the most considerable portion of the ruins, but there is a large enclosure of ivy-mantled walls remaining, with a few broken arches. These are now crowned with wildflowers, whose peaceful blossoms wave unnoted, where the red cross banner of St. George once flaunted on tower and parapet of the sternly guarded fortress, that for centuries was regarded as the most important defence of the town of Kendal and the adjacent country. The warlike progenitors of Catharine had stern duties to perform, at the period when the kings of Scotland held Cumberland of the English crown, and were perpetually harassing the northern counties with predatory expeditions. Before the auspicious era when the realms of England and Scotland were united under one sovereign, the lord of Kendal Castle, like his feudal neighbour of Sizergh, was compelled to furnish a numerous quota of men-at-arms, for the service of the crown, and the protection of the border. The contingent consisted of horse and foot, and above all, of those bowmen, so renowned in border history and song, the Kendal archers. They are especially noted by the metrical chronicler of the battle of Flodden. These are the bows of Kentdale bold, who fierce will fight and never flee. Dame Maud Parr evinced a courageous disposition in venturing to choose Kendal Castle for the place of her accouchement, at a time when the northern counties were menaced with an invasion from the puissant and flower of Scotland, headed by their king in person. Sir Thomas Parr was, however, compelled to be on duty there, with his warlike main, in readiness either to attend the summons of the Lord Warden of the Marches, or to hold the fortress for the defence of the town and neighbourhood, and his lady, instead of remaining in the metropolis, or seeking a safer abiding place at Green's Norton, her own patrimonial domain, decided on sharing her husband's perils in the north, and there gave birth to Catharine. They had 2 other children, William, their son and heir, afterwards created Earl of Essex and Marquis of Northampton, and Anne, the wife of William Herbert, the natural son of the Earl of Pembroke, to which dignity he was himself raised by Edward VI. Sir Thomas Parr died in the year 1517, leaving his 3 infant children to the guardianship of his faithful widow, who is said to have been a lady of great prudence and wisdom, with a discreet care for the main chance. The will of Sir Thomas Parr is dated November 7th, the 9th of Henry VIII. He bequeathed his body to be interred at Blackfriars Church, London. All his manors, lands and tenements he gave to his wife, Dame Maud, during her life. He willed his daughters, Catharine and Anne, to have £800 between them as marriage portions, except they proved to be his heirs or his son's heirs, in which case that sum was to be laid out in copes and vestments, and given to the monks of Clairvaux, with £100 bestowed on the chantry of Kendal. He willed his son William to have his great chain, worth £140, which the king's grace gave him. He made Maud, his wife, and Dr. Tunstall, master of the rolls, his executors. £400, Catharine's moiety of the sum provided by her father for the nuptial portions of herself and her sister, would be scarcely equal to £2,000 in these days, and seems but an inadequate dowry for the daughters of parents so richly endowed with the gifts of fortune as Sir Thomas and Lady Parr. It was, however, all that was accorded to her who was hereafter to contract matrimony with the sovereign of the realm. Sir Thomas Parr died in London on the 11th of November, 4 days after the date of his will, in the parish of the Blackfriars, and there can be no doubt but he was interred in that church according to his own request. Yet, as lately as the year 1628, there is record of a tomb, bearing his effigies, name, and arms, in the chapel or family burying place of the Parrs, in the south choir of Kendal Church. It has been generally said that Catharine Parr received a learned education from her father, but as she was only in her 5th year when he died, it must have been to the maternal wisdom of Lady Parr that she was indebted, for those mental acquirements which so eminently fitted her to adorn the exalted station to which she was afterwards raised. Catharine was gifted by nature with fine talents, and these were improved by the advantages of careful cultivation. She both read and wrote Latin with facility, possessed some knowledge of Greek, and was well versed in modern languages. How perfect a mistress she was of her own, the elegance and beauty of her devotional writings are a standing monument. I have met with a passage concerning this queen, says Strype, in the margin of Bayle's Centuries, in possession of a late friend of mine, Dr. Sampson, which shows the greatness of her mind and the quickness of her wit, while she was yet a young child. Somebody skilled in prognostication, casting her nativity, said that she was born to sit in the highest seat of imperial majesty, having all the eminent stars and planets in her house. This she heard and took such notice of, that when her mother used sometimes to call her to work, she would reply, "My hands are ordained to touch crowns and sceptres, and not spindles and needles." This striking incident affords one among many instances, in which the prediction of a brilliant destiny has ensured its own fulfilment, by its powerful influence on an energetic mind. It is also an exemplification, at how precocious an age the germ of ambition may take root in the human heart. But however disposed the little Catharine might have been to dispense with the performance of her tasks, under the idea of queening it hereafter, Lady Parr was too wise a parent to allow vain dreams of royalty to unfit her child for the duties of the station of life in which she was born, and, notwithstanding Catharine's early repugnance to touch a needle, her skill and industry in its use became so remarkable, that there are specimens of her embroidery at Sizergh Castle, which scarcely could have been surpassed by the far-famed stitcheries of the sisters of King Athelstan. Though Dame Maud Parr had scarcely completed her 22nd year at the time of her husband's death, she never entered into a second marriage, but devoted herself entirely to the superintendence of her children's education. In the year 1524, she entered into a negotiation with her kinsman, Lord Dacre, for a marriage between his grandson, the heir of Lord Scroop, and her daughter Catharine, of which the particulars may be learned from some very curious letters preserved among the Scroop manuscripts. The first is from Dame Maud Parr to Lord Dacre, and refers to a personal conference she had had with his lordship at Greenwich on the subject of this alliance. Most honourable and my very good lord, I heartily commend me to you. Whereas it pleased you at your last being here to take pains in the matter in consideration of marriage between the Lord Scroop's son and my daughter Catharine, for the which I heartily thank you, at which time I thought the matter in good furtherance. Howbeit, I perceive that my Lord Scroop is not agreeable to that consideration. The jointure is little for 1100 marks, which I will not pass, and my said lord will not repay after marriage had, and 200 marks must needs be repaid if my daughter Catharine dies before the age of 16, or else I should break Master Parr's will, meaning the will of her husband Sir Thomas, which I should be loath to do, and there can be no marriage until my lord's son, Lord Scroop, comes to the age of 13, and my daughter to the age of 12, before which time, if the marriage should take none effect, or be dissolved either by death, wardship, disagreement, or otherwise, which may be before the time notwithstanding marriage solemnized, repayment must needs be had of the whole, or else I might fortune to pay my money for nothing. The conversation I had with you at Greenwich was that I was to pay at desire 1100 marks, 100 on hand, and 100 every year, which is as much as I can spare, as you know, and for that my daughter Catharine is to have 100 marks jointure, whereof I am to have 50 marks for her finding till they live together, then they are to have the whole 100 marks, and repayment to be had if the marriage took no effect. My lord, it may please you to take so much pain as to help to conclude this matter, if it will be, and if you see any defect on my part, it shall be ordered as ye deem good, as knoweth Jesu, who preserve your good lordship. Written at the Rye, the 13th of July. Your cousin, Maud Parr. Lord Scroop of Bolton Castle did not choose to submit to the refunding part of the clause, and was unwilling to allow more than 40 marks per annum for the board or finding of the young lady till the heir of Scroop came to the age of 18. Lord Dacre, after some inconsequential letters between him and Dame Maud, proved his sincerity in the promotion of the wedlock, by the following pithy arguments, contained in an epistle to Lord Scroop, his son-in-law. My lord, your son and heir is the greatest jewel that ye can have, seeing he must represent your own people after your death, unto whom I pray God grant many long years. And if ye be disposed to marry him, I cannot see, without you marrying him to an heir of land, which would be right costly, that ye can marry him to so good a stock as my lady Parr, for divers considerations. First, in remembering the wisdom of my said lady, and the good wise stock of the Greens, whereof she is coming, and also of the wise stock of the Parrs of Kendal, for all wise men do look, when they do marry their child, to the wisdom of the blood they do marry with. I speak not of the possibility of Lady Parr's daughter Catharine, who has but one child between her, and 800 marks yearly to inherit thereof. My lord, the demands you have and my lady's demands are so far asunder, that it is impossible ye can ever agree. I think it is not convenient nor profitable that so large a sum as 100 marks should go yearly out of your land to so young a person as my lady's eldest daughter, Catharine, if it fortune, as God defend, that your said son and mine die. Also I think it good, but I would not have it comprised in the covenant, that during the time of 3 years, that he should be with my said lady Parr, if she keep her widowhood, and ye to find him clothing and a servant to wait upon him, and she to find him meat and drink. For I assure you he might learn with her as well as in any place, that I know, as well nurture, as French and other languages, which meseems were a commodious thing for him. At Morpeth, 17th day of December, 15 year Henry VIII. These letters certify us that Catharine Parr was under 12 years of age in the year 1524. She could not, therefore, have been born before 1513. We also learn that Lord Dacre was anxious that his youthful grandson should participate in the advantages of the liberal education Lady Parr was bestowing on her children, and that he placed due importance on the fact that the lady came of a family celebrated for sound sense and good conduct, a point little regarded now in the marriages of the heirs of an illustrious line. Lady Parr and all her lineage had a great reputation for wisdom, it seems, but the wisdom of this world formed so prominent a feature in the matrimonial bargain which the sagacious widow and the worthy Lord Scroop were attempting to drive in behalf of their children, that the affair came to nothing. Lord Dacre tells Lady Parr that Lord Scroop must needs have money, and he has nothing whereof to make it but the marriage of his said son, and Dame Maud, in a letter from the court of Greenwich, dated the 15th of the following March, laments to Lord Dacre that the custom of her country, and the advice of her friends, will not permit her to submit to Lord Scroop's way of driving a bargain. Lord Dacre, who seems some degrees less acquisitive than his son and Lady Parr, replies: Madam, for my part, I am sorry that ye must be converted in this matter, seeing the labour I have had in it, which was most for the strength of my friendship for my cousin Catharine, your daughter, assuring you that ye shall not marry Catharine in any place that be so good and comfortable to my said cousin, your daughter. And concerning my Lord Scroop's demands, he demanded nothing but that ye were content to give, which was 1100 marks. And concerning his offer, which was 100 marks jointure, it is not far from the custom of the country, for, from the highest to the lowest, it is the custom to give for every 100 marks of dower 10 marks jointure. But finally, madam, seeing ye are thus minded, whereat I am sorry, as nature constraineth me to be, as it doth please you in this business, so it shall please me. And thus, heartily, fare ye well. At Morpeth, 25th day of May, 16 anno. Thus ended the abortive matrimonial treaty for the union of Catharine Parr and the heir of Scroop, who was her kinsman, by the maternal connexion of both with the great northern family of Dacre. Catharine must have been still of very tender age when she was given in marriage to her first husband, Edward, Lord Borough of Gainsborough, a mature widower, with children who had arrived at man's estate. Henry, the second of these sons, after his father's marriage with Catharine Parr, espoused her friend and kinswoman, Katharine Neville, the widow of Sir Walter Strickland, of Sizergh, and this lady, though only 29 at the time of her union, was 14 years older than her husband's stepmother. The principal family seat of Catharine's first husband was his manor house of Gainsborough, situated about 17 miles from Lincoln, and here, no doubt, he resided with his young bride. His father had expended considerable sums in enlarging and improving this mansion, which was sold, a century afterwards, by one of his descendants, to a wealthy London citizen. Lord Borough had a fine mansion at Catterick, in Yorkshire, and probably at Newark, likewise, where his arms, impaled with those of his first wife, Alice Cobham, were painted on the window which his father presented to the parish church. At Gainsborough church, on the tomb of the first Lord Borough, father to Catharine Parr's husband, the arms of Borough were quartered with Tallebois, Marmion, and Fitzhugh, which afforded sufficient proof of the ancestral connexion of this nobleman with the Parrs. He appears to have been related to Catharine somewhere about the 4th degree. He died in 1528-29. Catharine, therefore, could not have exceeded her 15th year at the period of her first widowhood. She had no children by Lord Borough. Soon after the death of her husband, Catharine was bereaved of her last surviving parent. From a passage in the will of Lady Parr, it appears as if that lady had sacrificed the interests of her daughter in order to purchase a marriage with a kinswoman of the sovereign, for her son, Sir William Parr. This strange document, which is utterly devoid of perspicuity and common sense, commences thus: Dame Maud Parr, widow, late wife of Sir Thomas Parr, deceased 20th of May, 21st of Henry VIII, 1529. My body to be buried in the church of the Blackfriars, London. Whereas, I have indebted myself for the preferment of my son and heir, William Parr, as well as to the king for the marriage of my said son, as to my lord of Essex for the marriage of my lady Bourchier, daughter and heir apparent to the said earl, and, my daughter, Sir William Parr, knight, my brother, Catharine Borough, my daughter, Thomas Pickering, esquire, my cousin, and steward of my house. Great difficulties were probably encountered by the executors of Lady Parr's will, as it was not proved till December 14th, 1531, more than 2 years after her death. Like many of the marriages based on parental pride and avarice, the union of Catharine's brother with the heiress of the royally descended and wealthy house of Bourchier proved a source of guilt and misery to both parties. The young Lady Parr was the sole descendant of Isabel Plantagenet, sister of the king's great-grandfather, Richard, Duke of York. This alliance increased the previous family connexion of the Parrs with the sovereign lineage on the female side. Some degree of friendly intercourse appears to have been kept up between the king and his cousin and the young Lady Parr, and we observe that, in the year 1530, she sent him a present of a coat of Kendal cloth. Both the brother and the uncle of Catharine were now attached to the royal household. But many reasons lead us to suppose that Catharine became an inmate of Sizergh Castle about this period. She was a lively, noble, and wealthy widow in her 16th year, when deprived of the protection of her last surviving parent. Her only near female relations were an unmarried sister younger than herself, and her aunt, Lady Throckmorton, who resided in a distant county. As heiress presumptive to her brother William, it was desirable to remain in the vicinity of Kendal Castle and the family estates in that neighbourhood. Therefore, the most prudent and natural thing she could do was to take up her abode with her kinswoman and friend, Lady Strickland. That lady, though she had by her marriage with Catharine's stepson, Henry Borough, become her daughter-in-law, was quite old enough to afford matronly countenance to the youthful widow of Lord Borough, whom, according to the quaint custom of the time, she called her good mother. Catharine Parr and Lady Strickland were alike descended from the Nevilles of Raby, and Sir Walter Strickland, the deceased husband of the latter, was also a relative of the Parrs; and as Lady Strickland held of the crown the wardship of her son, young Walter Strickland's person and estates, she remained mistress of Sizer Castle, even after her marriage with Henry Borough. At no other period of her life than the interval between her mother's death and her own marriage with Neville, Lord Latimer, could Catharine Parr have found leisure to embroider the magnificent counterpane and toilet cover, which are proudly exhibited at Sizer Castle, as trophies of her industry, having been worked by her own hands, during a visit to her kinsfolk there. As the ornamental labours of the needle have become once more a source of domestic enjoyment to the ladies of England, and even the lords of the creation appear to derive some pleasure, as lookers on, in tracing the progress of their fair friends at the embroidering frame, a brief description of these beautiful and well-preserved specimens of Catharine Parr's proficiency in that accomplishment may not be displeasing. The material on which both counterpane and toilet cover are worked is the richest white satin, of a fabric with which the production of no modern loom can vie. The centre of the pattern is a medallion, surrounded with a wreath of natural flowers, wrought in twisted silks and bullion. A spread eagle, in bold relief, gorged with the imperial crown, forms the middle. At each corner is a lively heraldic monster, of the dragon class, glowing with purple, crimson, and gold. The field is gaily beset with large flowers, in gorgeous colours, highly embossed and enriched with threads of gold. The toilet is ensuite, but of a smaller pattern. The lapse of 3 centuries has scarcely diminished the brilliancy of the colours, or tarnished the bullion. Nor is the purity of the satin sullied, though both these queenly relics have been used, on state occasions, by the family in whose possession they have remained, as precious heirlooms and memorials of their ancestral connexion with Queen Catharine Parr. The apartment which Catharine occupied in Sizer Castle is still called the Queen's Room. It is a fine state chamber in that ancient portion of the castle, in Danecourt Tower. It opens through the drawing room, and is panelled with richly carved black oak, which is covered with tapestry of great beauty. The designs represent hunting in all its gradations, from a fox chase up to a lion hunt, varied with delineations of trees and flowers, and surrounded with a very unique border, in which young tigers are fighting and brandishing their claws at each other, in the manner of enraged kittens. The most splendid patterns for modern needlework might be taken from these spirited devices. Over the lofty carved chimney piece are the arms of England and France, supported between the lion and the Tudor dragon, with the motto Vivat Regina. The date, 1569, proves they were put up some years after the death of Catharine Parr, though doubtless intended to commemorate the fact that this apartment was once honoured by her use. The bed, with its hangings of costly crimson damask, is shown as the veritable one in which she reposed. But the fashion of the bedstead is too modern to favour the tradition, which, we think, more probably belongs to one of the elaborately carved and canopied oaken bedsteads, coeval with the days of the Plantagenets, which are to be seen in other chambers of this venerable mansion. How long Catharine continued the widow of Lord Borough is uncertain, but she was probably under 20 years of age when she became, for the second time, the wife of a mature widower, and again undertook the office of a stepmother. It is not unlikely that her residence at Sizer Castle might lead to her marriage with John Neville, Lord Latimer, as Lady Strickland was a Neville, of Thornton Briggs, and would naturally afford her kinsman every facility for his courtship of their fair cousin. Lord Latimer was related to Catharine in about the same degree as her first husband, Lord Borough. The date of her marriage with this nobleman is not known. He had been previously married twice: first, to Elisabeth, daughter of Sir Richard Musgrave, who died without issue; secondly, to Dorothy, daughter of Sir George de Vere, and sister and co-heiress to John de Vere, 14th Earl of Oxford, by whom he had 2 children, John and Margaret. The second Lady Latimer died in 1526–27. After Catharine became the wife of Lord Latimer, she chiefly resided with him and his family at his stately mansion of Snape Hill, in Yorkshire, which is thus described by Leland. Snape, a goodly castle in a valley belonging to Lord Latimer, with 2 or 3 good parks well wooded about it. It is his chief house, and standeth about 2 miles from Great Tanfield. The manors of Cumberton, Wadborough, and several other estates in Worcestershire, which he inherited from Elisabeth Beauchamp, were settled on Catharine Parr at her marriage with this wealthy noble. The ancestors of Catharine Parr, the Marmions, had formerly held sway at Tanfield, and through the marriage of her grandfather, Sir William Parr, with Elisabeth Fitzhugh, the granddaughter of the heiress of Sir Robert Marmion, the castle and manor of Tanfield descended to the father of Catharine, and was now the property of her brother, young William Parr. He was at that time childless, and as Catharine was his heiress presumptive, there was a contingency, by no means remote, of this demesne, which was so desirably contiguous to her husband's estates, falling to her. It would be too much to say that Lord Latimer had an eye to this contingency when he sought the hand of Catharine Parr, for she was young, lovely, accomplished, learned, and virtuous, and, to a man who had enjoyed the opportunity of becoming acquainted with the perfections of a mind like hers, the worldly advantages that might accrue from a matrimonial alliance with her must have been considerations of a very secondary nature. Fortunate, indeed, must Lord Latimer have felt himself, in being able to obtain so charming a companion for his latter days, and at the same time one so well qualified to direct the studies and form the minds of his children. The amiable temper and sound sense of Catharine taught her to perform the difficult duties that devolved upon her, in the character of a stepmother, with such conscientious and endearing gentleness, that she ensured the love and esteem of all the families with whom she was connected in that capacity. During the first years of her marriage with Lord Latimer, she pursued the noiseless tenor of her way, in the peaceful routine and privacy of domestic life, to which those talents and acquirements which afterwards rendered her the admiration of the most learned men in Europe, and the intellectual model of the ladies of England, was calculated to lend a charm. Section 2.